For more than 150 years, fans, players, and executives of the national pastime have prided themselves on having some of the cleanest, sharpest, and most classic uniforms in the history of sports. Some of the uniforms worn by teams like the Cubs, Cardinals, Dodgers, Red Sox, and Yankees have been around for many decades with very little change. However, during the last couple of weeks, as 2024 spring training has kicked off, fans and players have noticed some unflattering alterations to the MLB uniforms, which suddenly have smaller names on the backs with a more pronounced curve, an unnatural lower placement of the MLB logo, shades of gray on the pants and jersey that don't match, and even see-through pants that show more than any fan should ever see at a Major League Baseball game. Most, if not all, of these issues will likely be fixed by opening day, but if not, it wouldn't be the first time that some hideous uniforms found their way onto the field of play during official MLB games. In trying to create something unique and interesting, many great uniforms have been designed, including the 1980s Montreal Expos unis and many of the Oakland A's uniforms of the 1970s. However, sometimes the result just doesn't land. And I'm not talking about actual mistakes, such as when the Nationals jersey was misspelled as Nationals.
You blew it!
I'm talking about uniforms that were simply unattractive to the point that they usually only lasted a season or two, or sometimes just a single game. And today I'll be ranking my 10 ugliest MLB uniforms of all time. Note that there are several uniforms known for being ugly that I don't actually mind too much, such as the mid-80s White Sox uniforms or the 1990s teal Marlins uniforms. Also, the all-blue Cardinals look isn't so bad in my opinion. So this is my own personal list, and even some of the ones that made the list are classic uniforms that many people love. So I apologize in advance if one of your favorite team's uniforms makes the list. Today's list will be ranked from the best of the worst to the worst of the worst. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 10, the LA Dodgers 2021 through 2023 City Connects. These were my least favorite City Connects, and it's not because I'm a Giants fan. As we'll find out throughout this video, wearing colored pants that match the top usually isn't a good idea, and in this case, it makes the entire thing look like pajamas. Additionally, having the entire team name on the cap isn't a very clean look, and overall, these just aren't very impressive in my opinion. For a city with as much going on as Los Angeles, these uniforms were extremely boring and frankly ugly. The Dodgers recently announced that they'll be introducing newly designed City Connects for the 2024 season. I say, good move. Number 9, the 2019 Players Weekend monochromatic uniforms. In 2017, in an effort to give the players a long overdue opportunity to express their own personality and style on the field, MLB announced Players Weekend. The first 2 seasons were a success, but in 2019, MLB required every player to wear either all black or all white uniforms with no exceptions.
What?
So in order to celebrate the players' independent personalities, they had to wear all black or all white. Actually, there was one exception. The pitcher on the all-white team had to wear a black cap to help the hitters see the ball. So one team had a player intentionally out of uniform. Players were allowed to customize some logos and put a nickname on the back, but it was hardly noticeable as every uniform across baseball looked the same. Some fans said it looked like one giant chess game. Indians manager Terry Francona said he didn't plan to make any mound visits so that no one would see him wearing the uniform. He said, "What's the slogan? Let the kids play? More like let the grown-ups look like morons." Number 8, the 1974 all-red Cleveland Indians uniforms. It's now time for the first, but certainly not the last, MLB uniform from the 1970s. The mid-70s all-red uniform for the Cleveland Indians is another example of the colored matching jersey and pants looking terrible. In this case, there are many fans and journalists who've called the look racist, although I doubt that was the intention of the designers at the time. Regardless of the intention, this all-ketchup look is pretty hideous. Simply having white pants with the red top was miles better, and this was the uniform that Dwayne Kuiper wore when he hit his one and only big league home run. Thankfully, he didn't hit it in 1974 with the all-red look. Number 7, the 1975 to 1986 Houston Astros Tequila Sunrise uniforms. This might be a controversial one, as the Astros wore these uniforms for so many years that they've become iconic and a fan favorite, and even I got used to them after a while. But when I ignore the history behind these, let's be honest, they're pretty wild and over the top in just how much Tequila Sunrise rainbow there is on the front of these. Perhaps they were a good fit for the futuristic Astros teams playing in the Astrodome at the time, but had they never existed and got introduced as the new Astros uniforms today, I have no doubt in my mind they would be completely ridiculed and hated by every MLB fan, including Astros fans. The more conventional white look with the rainbow on the top of the shoulders looks much better in my opinion. Even when the Astros wear the full Tequila Sunrise uniforms now as a throwback, it's always fun for a day, but I look at them and think that I would never want these to be permanent again. Number 6, the 1944 Brooklyn Dodgers alternate satin uniforms. Well, I thought the Dodgers City Connect uniforms looked like pajamas, but check out these bad boys. In 1944, night games were just being introduced and the lights weren't quite as powerful as they are today. So, in order to help the players be more visible, these reflective satin uniforms were designed as alternate uniforms for night games. The powder blue uniforms were uncomfortable for players and looked weird to fans. The Dodgers and other great teams like the Cardinals experimented with some other satin uniforms in the years to come, and those weren't great either, but the powder blue ones definitely stood out the most. And in 2011, the Dodgers wore throwbacks as an homage to those satin jerseys, but they chickened out when it came to the full reflective satin and wore similar uniforms with a flat blue color. They should have went with the full reflective satin. Come on. Number 5, the 1972 to 1973 San Diego Padres mustards. Many of the San Diego Padres uniforms of the past and present have found a way to somehow turn brown and mustard yellow into some pretty impressive looking uniforms. But for 2 years, from 1972 to 73, they went a little too far with the mustard yellow, wearing the color from head to toe with just brown trim. During those 2 years, the uniforms certainly did not help the play on the field, as the Padres lost nearly 200 games and the attendance was abysmal as well. The all-mustard look was just awful. Even just having traditional white pants makes a huge improvement. Whenever the pants are colored to match the jerseys, as I've said, there's a good chance the overall look will be bad. But when the color just happens to be mustard with brown trim, well, it's no surprise that these unis made the list. In 1974, the Padres changed back to the white uniforms and road grays with just yellow and brown trim, a much better look. The mustard pants would return as an alternate look throughout the 70s, but with a brown jersey. Still not great, but better than the all-mustard look. Imagine if the all-mustard Padres took on the all-ketchup Indians back in the 70s. That would have been something, but there's an even worse all one color uniform in my opinion, and it's number 4, the 1979 maroon on maroon full zip Philadelphia Phillies alternate uniforms. In 1979, the Phillies introduced a new alternate uniform for Saturday games, but as it turned out, the team wore them just one time and refused to do it ever again. As bad as the all ketchup Indians and all mustard Padres uniforms looked, I think this one is even worse. The only color I've seen that looks halfway decent with matching pants and jerseys other than white is the light blue Cardinals and Expos look. The Orioles did it with an all orange look, and that's not too great either, but it didn't quite make my top 10 worst. But the all burgundy, full zip-up Phillies uniforms embarrassed the players to the point that they would not wear those babies again, at least not for another 40 years. When Andrew McCutchen and his teammates donned the 1979 jerseys once again, but this time completely leaned into the ridiculousness and had fun with it. It's the only way you can do it. These things just look terrible. Number 3, turn ahead the clock uniforms. After a few years of the popular turn back the clock days, MLB decided to try out an interesting promotion, turn ahead the clock. And in 1999, all but 8 teams took the field wearing these futuristic jerseys that were supposed to represent 2021, a ridiculous concept in that it was just 22 years away. And the uniforms were absolutely atrocious, with cut-off sleeves, untucked jerseys, wacky and outlandish logos, names printed vertically. They should have called these uniforms from 1,000 years in the future so that no one would be alive to find out just how wrong they were. I couldn't pick just one team to represent these babies because they all looked pretty bad. Look at the Pirates turn ahead the clock uniforms. They are so ugly that they make those 2007 sleeveless Reds look awesome. Some teams even changed their names, with the Mets going by the Mercury Mets. Overall, these uniforms were completely panned, but I can't put it at number one because it was a wild promotion and nothing was supposed to be taken too seriously. So the players had fun with it, we move on, but these uniforms looked terrible. Number two, the 1976 Chicago White Sox alternate collar jerseys with shorts. During the off-season before the 1976 season, White Sox owner Bill Veeck, who was known for his wild ideas, had some of his players model some wild uniforms with collar jerseys and actual shorts instead of pants. No one thought that they would actually wear them for a real game, but on August 8th, 1976, Veeck ordered his team to do just that, and the White Sox became the laughing stock of baseball as they wore these absolutely hideous uniforms against the Royals. However, many players actually liked them, and they wore them 2 more times, winning all 3 games in these crazy-looking uniforms with shorts before Bill Veeck retired them for good. For many years, these would have easily come in at number 1 as the worst uniforms of all time. But in 2021, Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred were able to outdo them for one of MLB's most important events. Number 1, the 2021 AllStar Game uniforms. Throughout the history of the All-Star Game, players typically wore the jerseys of their own team during the game. At some point, AL and NL uniforms were created for the All-Star Monday events, but players still wore their actual team jerseys for the game. But in 2021, MLB introduced some of the ugliest uniforms ever designed, and players were to wear them not just for All-Star Monday, but for the actual game on Tuesday. When I saw this uniform for the first time on Twitter, I thought it was a complete joke. It looks like a golf shirt with the city abbreviation vertically on the side, and then the actual team logo plastered right on top of it, with the tacky Nike swoosh on the other side. The caps looked okay with a purple star and logo over it, but did not go with the rest of the uniform whatsoever. The American League uniform was the worst of all, with an all dark blue look, including dark blue pants. The American flag was on the sleeve, but in a single color. I could go on and on, but the bottom line is these uniforms were representing Major League Baseball on one of its biggest stages in 2021 and completely missed the mark. That's why, even though it could be argued that some of the previous uniforms were even uglier, I have to put these as the worst in MLB history, as they were used for the All-Star Game. At least the White Sox shorts and turn-ahead-the-clock jerseys were promotional stunts, and they were not supposed to be taken seriously. This was
epic fail.
And that does it for my top 10 worst and ugliest uniforms in MLB history. Let me know your thoughts down below, and let me know some of your ugliest uniforms that you remember, some that I might have missed. And what did I include that you actually like? I'm sure a lot of people love those 80s Astros jerseys, but for me, it's just a bit too much. But thank you all for checking out the video. I hope they fix the uniforms for 2024, or those babies might make this list as well. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you in the next video.